I would go and see this Lord, the perfected one, the all-awakened one. This is Buddhist Books Podcast, episode 249, Tipiṭaka, part 165, Mahāvagga V, part 4. You can see me looking down at my notes, in which I will continue reading Mahāvagga V. Now, but first I wanted to mention, because there were a couple people commenting on the previous episode with the feeling that they will never catch up. And this is partially my fault, because I come on here at the beginning of the episode and say how many hundreds of episodes, that this is number 249, and perhaps there's a feeling, I think because we're used to keeping up or catching up from other contexts, and we feel like we need to be current. We feel like we need to be, up to date with what's going on, completely 100% familiar with what's happening in order to watch today's episode, the episode coming out today, so that we can, have a water cooler conversation, that kind of thing. Are you caught up on Game of Thrones? Yeah. Did you see last night's episode? Oh my God. That kind of thing. But obviously this is not exactly like that. There's a few things. I'm going to go off on some tangents today. I hope you don't mind before we get to the reading. We will never catch up. That's on one hand, but that is not a cause for any kind of concern. On the other hand, when it comes to the subject matter, this is all for the love of the Buddhist way, the Buddhist philosophy, which is best expressed in total silence. But if you try to express silence to somebody, they'll think you aren't saying anything to them. So it helps to kind of orbit around that silence with some words. And this is kind of getting, spiraling way out into the perimeter of the words. Up above my head, Editor Edward, could you show them what's up above my head? Thank you, is a mandala. And just to use that idea, just for this simple metaphor, I'm not getting into mandalas or anything about real mandalas, just for the sake of what I'm saying right now. The heart of the mandala can be found, doesn't even have to be called anything with ism at the end. Bud just means awake, Buddha. Means the awakened. The rest of it's the further away you get from the center, kind of the less useful, unless you're on your way toward the center. If you're in the periphery of the mandala, for the sake of being in the periphery of the mandala, that's not so great. And to all appearances, that's what this channel is just in the periphery for the sake of being in the periphery. It's not my intent. There are, documented cases Dogen talks about and others of people attaining enlightenment, legitimate enlightenment, even becoming Buddhist patriarchs, without ever hearing the sutras, without ever learning the sutras, without ever meeting another Buddhist. It's rare, but I think it's important to point out that it's not necessary. There are many people who have not read the Tipiṭaka, and many monks that have not read the Tipiṭaka. And again, the one I mentioned will never catch up. That's the nature of this world. The nature of the human experience is we're born and we open our eyes as a baby and someone says, it's 1985 or whatever year it is. And what does that mean? Well, that means, you know what a year is? You mean that really super long amount of time between birthdays? Yeah. Well, there's 1,985 of those between now and when the calendar began, the common calendar. You know, every human being has contributed something to the world. And it's a vast amount that each one has contributed, and there have been billions. And to know everything there is to know is impossible for one human being. And one response to that, I think, is a fairly common response these days, which I would say is unfortunate, is to just say, why bother? Why bother trying? I'm just going to scroll through my TikTok, or whatever. And so people kind of, each generation seem to become a little more ignorant than the previous one. I hope that turns around. I really do. That's kind of at the heart of everything I do with this and with chicken philosophy. There's another channel where I read other books that aren't related to Buddhism called Chicken Philosophy. And I think it's okay to jump in the middle. I mean, like I said, we all jump in the middle. We learn what we can from our elders. They explain, this Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure is based on something I watched as a kid with your grandfather called Doctor Who. And you say, wow, interesting. And then when you're older, they bring Doctor Who back and you kind of know what it is. This is the origin of Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, even though that came out before the Christopher Eccleston reboot. Not reboot, but this isn't about Doctor Who. I think it's okay to be a little lost. I think it's okay to jump in at episode 249 without having seen episodes 1 through 248. And it's okay to not understand exactly. I mean, partly because it's a translation of something from 2,600 or 2,000, however many hundred years ago that it first got written down or first started orally being passed down in the form that it is. So it's a little confusing even if you did start with episode 1. But even if you did start with episode 1, it wouldn't necessarily help as far as having any kind of a deeper relationship with the core teachings of Buddhism, of the embracing of impermanence, the letting go of attachment in order to experience true happiness. Not joy, not, oh my God, it's my birthday kind of happiness, but happiness. A lack of at least a self-generated suffering. Anyway, those are my thoughts. I don't know if I said everything I wanted to say, but I just wanted to say don't worry about catching up. And don't worry about being behind. Don't worry about being in episodes that I recorded 2 years ago. I think that my personality was a little less refined 2 years ago in my general approach, and I was a little bit heavier, and so it might not be as pleasant to watch. I was speaking a little more loudly, and I was sitting at a desk in New Delhi as opposed to sitting in front of a bookshelf in Goa, so it just has a different vibe to it. But if you want to hear the whole Tipiṭaka, you can start with episode 1 and work your way forward if you want to. And in order to do that, you just click here And there's the playlist. You can jump in anywhere in the middle, too. All right, that's enough, I'd say. I think I said everything I wanted to say. So now we will get to today's reading. And I will do my best because I forgot my magnifying glass. All right, eyes. I'm calling upon the spirit of eyes to be with me today. Now at that time, the Venerable Kakana the Great. I don't know who that is. I mean, I don't think we've met him before, so this is a new character. Okay, the Venerable Kakana the Great was staying among the people of Avanti at Osprey's haunt on steep rock mountain slope. Now at that time, the lay follower, Sona Kutikana, was a supporter of the Venerable Kakana the Great. Then the lay follower, Sona Kutikana, approached the Venerable Kakana the Great. Having greeted the Venerable Kakana the Great, he sat down at a respectful distance. As he was sitting down at a respectful distance, the lay follower, Sona Katikana, Katikana, spoke thus to the Venerable Kokana the Great, quote, "Insofar as I, honored sir, understand Dhamma taught by the Master Kakana the Great, it is no easy matter for one living in a house to lead the Brahma faring, which is utterly complete, utterly pure, and polished like a conch shell. I want, honored sir, having cut off hair and beard, having donned yellow robes, to go forth from home into homelessness. Honored sir, may the Master Kakana the Great let me go forth." End quote. He said, quote, "Difficult, Sona, for as long as life lasts, are the solitary sleeping place, the one meal, parentheses, a day, end parentheses, the Brahma faring. Please do you, Sona, being a householder, as before, practice the instruction of the awakened ones for a short time, the solitary sleeping place, the one meal, parentheses, a day, end parentheses, the Brahma faring." End quote. Then that abated which had been the lay follower Sona Kutikana's strong aspiration for the going forth. But a second time did the lay follower Sona Kutikana, three dots. But a third time did the lay follower Sona Kutikana approach the Venerable Kakana the Great, three dots, as in two. I think it's safe to assume he said all the same stuff and got the same response. Quote, "Honored sir, may the Master Kakana the Great let me go forth." End quote. Then the Venerable Kakana the Great let the lay follower Sona Kutikana go forth. Now at that time, the southern region of Avanti came to be short of monks. Then did the Venerable Kakana the Great, at the end of 3 years, with difficulty, with trouble, having convened from here and there an order of monks consisting of 10, ordain the Venerable Sona. Then, as the Venerable Sona was keeping the reins and meditating in seclusion, a reasoning arose in his mind thus, quote, "I have only heard that this Lord is such and such a one, but I have not seen him face to face. I would go and see this Lord, the perfected one, the all-awakened one. If a preceptor would allow me. End quote. Then the Venerable Sona, emerging from seclusion towards the evening, approached the Venerable Kakana the Great. Having greeted the Venerable Kakana the Great, he sat down at a respectful distance. As he was sitting down at a respectful distance, the Venerable Sona spoke thus to the Venerable Kakana the Great. Quote, Now, as I, honored sir, was meditating in seclusion, a reasoning arose in my mind thus. Quote within quotes, I have only heard that this Lord is such and such a one, but I have not seen him face to face. I would go to see this Lord, the perfected, the all-awakened one, if a preceptor would allow me. End quote within quotes. I, honored sir, would go to see this Lord, the perfected, the all-awakened one, if the preceptor allows me. End quote. Quote, good. It is good, Sona. Do you, Sona, go to see this Lord, the perfected one, the all-awakened one. You, Sona, will see this Lord, who is pleasant and inspires one to be pleased, who is calmed in his sense organs, calmed in mind, who has attained the uttermost taming and peace, the hero tamed, guarded, controlled in his sense organs. Well then do you, Sona, in my name salute the Lord's feet with your head, saying, quote within quotes, Lord, my preceptor, the Venerable Kakana the Great, salutes the Lord's feet with his head, end quote within quotes, and then speak thus, quote within quotes, Lord, the southern region of Avanti is short of monks. At the end of 3 years, parentheses, he, end parentheses, with difficulty, with trouble, having had convened for me from here and there an order of monks consisting of 10, I received ordination. Perhaps the Lord would allow ordination by a smaller group in the southern region of Avanti. Lord, in the southern region of Avanti, the surface soil is dark, hard, trampled by the hooves of cattle. Perhaps the Lord would allow sandals with many linings in the southern region of Avanti. Lord, in the southern region of Avanti, people attach importance to bathing, to purification by water. Perhaps the Lord would allow constant bathing in the southern region of Avanti. Lord, in the southern region of Avanti, hides, parentheses, are used as, end parentheses, coverings, sheep hide, goat hide, deer hide. As, Lord, in the middle districts, Eragu, Moragu, Majharu, Jantu, parentheses, are used, end parentheses, so Lord, in the southern region of Avanti, hides, parentheses, are used as, end parentheses, coverings. Perhaps the Lord would allow hides, parentheses, to be used as, end parentheses, coverings in the southern region of Avanti. Sheep hide, goat hide, deer hide. Let's just take a moment and consider. Picture monks, Buddhist monks, the old school Burmese, Sri Lankan, Theravadan orders with the orange cloth, the Tibetan monks with maroon and such. Can you imagine a Buddhist monk wearing animal skin? Neither can I. I think I know where this is going, but let's read on. Okay. At present, Lord, people give robe material to monks who have gone outside the boundaries, saying, quote, within quote, because remember, he's telling his student to say to the Lord these words, and within those words he's telling him to say, there's a quote, so it's quotes within quotes within quotes. Okay. It's okay if you're confused. Embrace the confusion. Breathe in and breathe out amidst the confusion at all times. Okay. Yes, quote within quote within quotes. We are giving this robe material for so-and-so, end quote within quote within quote. When these have come back, parentheses, the others, end parentheses, announce, quote within quote, your reverence, robe material was given for you by the people so-and-so, end quote within quote, but these, being scrupulous, do not consent to it, thinking, quote within quote, let there not be an offense involving forfeiture for us, end quote within quote. Perhaps the Lord would explain the procedure in regard to robe material, end quote within quotes. Yes, honored sir. Oh, excuse me. So after, in regard to robe material, end quote within quote, end quote. Quote, yes, honored sir, end quote. That's the response from the student saying, yeah, okay, I've memorized everything you just said, and I'm going to go say that to the Lord Buddha, that is. And the Venerable Sona, having spoken in assent to the Venerable Kakana the Great, Kakana, Sona, remember? All right. Yes. Rising from his seat, having greeted the Venerable Kakana the Great, having kept his right side towards him, having packed away his lodging, taking his bowl and robe, set out for Savatthi. In due course he approached Savatthi, the Jeta Grove, Anapindika's monastery, the Lord. Having approached, having greeted the Lord, he sat down at a respectful distance. Then the Lord addressed the Venerable Ananda, saying, quote, Ananda, make ready a lodging for this incoming monk, end quote within quotes. Then the Venerable Ananda thought, quote, the Lord desires to stay in the same dwelling place together with this monk. The Lord desires to stay in the same dwelling place together with the Venerable Sona. It is he in regard to whom the Lord enjoined me, saying, quote within quotes, Ananda, make ready a lodging for this incoming monk, end quote within quotes, end quote. And he made ready a lodging for the Venerable Sona in that dwelling place where the Lord was staying. Then the Lord, having spent a great part of that night in the open air, entered the dwelling place. The Venerable Sona also, having spent a great part of that night in the open air, entered the dwelling place. Then the Lord, getting up in the night towards dawn, requested the Venerable Sona, saying, quote, may parentheses sum end parentheses Dhamma occur to you to speak, monk, end quote. Quote, very well, Lord, end quote. And the Venerable Sona, having replied in assent to the Lord, spoke from memory everything belonging to the divisions in the eights. I think we'll get to that later. That's probably from the the Dhamma Piṭaka, this the teachings basket, the one right behind me. This is the discipline basket. So in a couple years, we'll probably read, and then we'll know what he's talking about. Okay, I'm not caught up, see. All right. This is the way this is written. You kind of have to already know what's in these books to get every reference in these books. So nobody's caught up until they finish the last book, which is down here. Okay, where were we? Then the Lord, at the end of the Venerable Sona's recital, expressed his approbation, saying, quote, "Good. It is good, monk, that by you, monk, the divisions in the eights are well learnt, well attended to, well reflected upon, and that you are endowed with lovely speech, distinct, without hoarseness, so as to make the meaning clear. Of how many years standing are you, monk?" End quote. Quote, "I, Lord, am of 1 year's standing." End quote. Quote, "But what have you, monk, done thus long?" End quote. Quote, "For long, Lord, I have seen peril in pleasures of the senses, but household lives are crowded. There is much to be done, much busyness." End quote. Then the Lord, having understood this matter, and at that time uttered this utterance. Quote, "Having seen peril in the world, having known Dhamma without attachment, the noble one delights not in evil, the pure one delights in instruction." End quote. Then the Venerable Sona, thinking, quote, "The Lord is much pleased with me. This is the time for that which the preceptor prepared me," end quote, rising from his seat, having arranged his upper robe over one shoulder, having inclined his head to the Lord's feet, spoke thus, quote, "Lord, my preceptor, the Venerable Kakana the Great, salutes the Lord's feet with his head," and speaks thus, quote within quotes, "The southern region of Avati, Lord," 3 dots, it's all the stuff that he said to say. Thank you, Pali Society. Sincerely, for not making us read all that again. All right. Perhaps the Lord would explain the procedure in regard to robe material. Remember, that was how it all ended. End quote within quotes, end quote. Then the Lord, on this occasion, in this connection, having given reason to talk, addressed the monks, saying, quote, "Monks, the southern region of Avati is short of monks. I allow monks in all border districts ordination by a group with, as fifth, an expert on discipline." Okay. "For this purpose, these are the border districts. The little town called Kajangala is in the eastern direction. Beyond it is Mahasala. Further than that are border districts. On this side are the middle districts, end parentheses. The river called Salavati is in the southeastern direction. Further than that are border districts. On this side are the middle districts, end parentheses. The little town called Setakanika is in the southern direction. Further than that are border districts on this side. Okay. Our border districts on this side are the middle districts, end parentheses. The Brahmin village called Thuna is in the western direction. Further than that are border districts. On this side are the middle districts, end parentheses. The mountain slope called Ustrataja is in the northern direction. Further than that are border districts. On this side are the middle districts and parentheses. I allow monks in such border districts as these ordination by a group with, as fifth, an expert on discipline. In the southern region of Avanti, monks, the surface soil is hard, dark, trampled by the hooves of cattle. I allow monks in all border districts sandals with many linings. In the southern region of Avanti, monks, people attach importance to bathing, to purification by water. I allow monks in all border districts constant bathing. In the southern region of Avanti, monks, hides, parentheses, are used as, and parentheses, coverings, sheep hide, goat hide, deer hide. As monks in the middle districts, Eragu, Moragu, Majhara, Jantu, parentheses, are used, end parentheses. So monks in the southern region of Avanti, hides, parentheses, are used as, end parentheses, coverings, sheep hide, goat hide, deer hide. I allow monks in all border districts, hides, parentheses, to be used, end parentheses, as coverings, sheep hide, goat hide, deer hide. And moreover, monks, people give robe material for monks who have gone outside the boundaries, saying, quote and quotes, we are giving this robe material for so-and-so, end parentheses, end quote and quotes. I allow you monks to consent, parentheses, to it, end parentheses. That reckoning is not necessary until it reaches the hand, end quote. The fifth section, that on hides. I did not expect it to go in that direction. The Lord Buddha gave permission for his monks in the border districts to wear hides. Well, I'm curious to see where that's going to go next. Because I have never, that I can think of. I mean, surely there are people who are on the Buddhist path who wear like a leather jacket. I mean, very loosely speaking, lay people. But I don't think I recall ever seeing a monk, an ordained monk, wearing some kind of leather or anything. So that's very interesting. All right. I don't know if you found that interesting, but perhaps you did. So another thing, aside from me bragging about how many of these episodes I've done, another thing about the numbering system is it also helps. I like to kind of like ritualize, certain things that I want to keep coming back to. And so every 10 episodes, when the last digit of the number of the episode is 0, we read from The Life and Liberation of Padmasambhava. Now, Padmasambhava was somebody who lived approximately 1,200 years or 1,200-ish years after Lord Buddha, 1,200 years after Lord Buddha. By then, the original order, after Lord Buddha passed away, the original order started to split after a while into a few different orders. And then the person who was at the time the king of India, basically, he had conquered many lands. He became a devout Buddhist. He had the third council. Then there were 14 different orders, each claiming to be the real one and claiming that the other ones weren't the real one. Then these Mahayana texts, these sutras, started to appear. Mahayana became very popular. Then there were these great debates between the old style monks that are, adhere only to this, and the ones that more, are oriented toward these new sutras that they themselves came around 700 years minimum after this Tipiṭaka, right? And then there was the tantric movement in Hinduism, which basically mostly means doing pujas at home, doing rituals at home with your family, not always being dependent on going to a Brahmin or a priest in a temple. So having a little bell, having incense, having statues and things in order to keep the practice going within the home. That's basically the gist of Tantra. I know in the West they associate other more tantalizing elements that did exist, but not as prominently as like the obvious stuff, which is like, the incense and the bell and doing it at home and, this kind of thing. So these elements also worked their way into Buddhism, and out of that, and, with a few other elements, mandalas and different things, came Vajrayana Buddhism. So Vajrayana was popular. And then Padmasambhava, the man we know as Padmasambhava, was born in what we today would call Pakistan. And he had a long life and many adventures, many journeys, and learned from many interesting sages. And he went to Nalanda University, which if you've seen that movie with the Chinese monk that came in 6th century, you already are familiar with Nalanda University. And he knew teachers there. And eventually, later in life, he went to Tibet. And he brought Vajrayana Buddhism with him. And there are many great statues of him. There's temples dedicated to him. There's all these different things. There's a chant, Om Om Vajra Guru Pema Siddhi Hum, is how people honor and pray to that monk, that Vajrayana monk from Pakistan who brought the teachings to Tibet. So he's very important in Tibet. And every 10 episodes, we read the life and liberation of Padmasambhava by the Queen Yeshi Tsogyal, who was his student. And so you can feel free to, when that episode comes out, which will be the next episode to come out on Buddhist Books Podcast, you can feel free to enjoy that. If you would like, you can catch up, as it were, if you want to. Again, it's optional. Here's the playlist, the Padmasambhava playlist. You can start with the first episode if you want to and work your way through the whole thing before the next episode comes out in a few days, or not. Again, it's up to you. And I hope that I've alleviated, at least for the people who saw this episode, who had previously had a feeling of, I'm never going to catch up. There's no need to catch up. There's no reason to catch up. I will never catch up. How do you think I feel? I'm trying to catch up. I'm trying to get to... My dad's teacher wrote this book. But before I read that book that my dad's Buddhist teacher wrote, I want to read all of Theravada, all the pre-sectarian early Buddhism. I want to read all the Mahayana and all the commentaries of all the Theravadan scholar monks. And then I want to read all the later Mahayana and all the Vajrayana and all the Zen. And catch up before I read what some Italian guy in the 70s taught my dad. That's where I'm coming from. I don't know if I'll ever catch up. I might not read all these books in my lifetime, but you know what? I'm okay with it. And I think that you should be okay with it too, if you have not seen all 249 episodes of Buddhist Books Podcast. I'm going to go ahead and do the closing prayer now. To the north and to the south, to the east and to the west, to the spirits of light among us and to the spirits below, we send out our reverent love and compassion. May all beings be happy. May all beings be serene. May all beings be in peace. Oh.